Since everyone else started with an inspirational quote, I will do the same. Good morning, Vietnam! Which loosely translates to good morning, Sergeant Sailor, and good morning, class. I'm Specialist Bradley Bedell. I will be talking to you today about servant leadership. The overall classification of this brief is unclassified. Today we're going to discuss what is a servant leader, the pros and cons of servant leadership, how the Army views servant leadership. We will look at 3 examples from Army history and discuss what our role as new NCOs is in developing ourselves and our soldiers, followed by a summary and a time for questions. So today, again, we will be defining servant leadership, discussing some pros and cons. Personally, I believe that servant leadership is the bedrock to all leadership styles, as it gets you out of the way and puts others first. Next, we will examine 3 examples from Army history, and finally, we will look at what it means for us as new NCOs. So what is servant leadership? It is a timeless principle that has always been around and has been exemplified by numerous historical figures such as Harriet Tubman, Jesus, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, and so on. The phrase was officially coined in 1970 by Robert K. Greenleaf, who is known as the founder of modern-day servant leadership. And he emphasized that a leader must be a servant first and must want to serve or have a desire to put others above themselves. The Army's definition, according to NCO Journal, defines servant leadership as putting the needs of others first and helping people develop and perform as highly as possible, and is ingrained in Army culture within the NCO Corps. In fact, the very word sergeant comes from the French word for servant. And I'll let you read the bottom of it. Basically, according to the Army, servant leadership is what keeps the Army moving and keeps us striving to reach new heights, keeps us separate from other forces around the world. Pros and cons. Servant leadership puts pride and ego aside and allowing time to develop others and meet the needs of others. Gives you a sense of honor and accomplishment. There's joy in seeing others succeed. Servant leadership builds others up and encourages other people. It earns respect, or builds respect, trust, and camaraderie. And in general, servant leadership makes the world a better place. When you get outside of yourself, you're able to help others and make the world a better place. There are, however, some cons. There can be potential for burnout. It can be harmful for your holistic health. It can impede on personal tasks and career development. As you pour in so much time into other people, you might tend to neglect yourself. So just remember that as you're serving others, self-care is not selfish. Take time to balance your life and your priorities. Take time to recharge and make sure that you're staying up with everything you need to stay up with. So 3 historic examples from Army history. First, we have Dr. Marie Edwards Walker, who was born in Oswego, New York in 1832, and became a doctor of medicine in 1855. Despite being rejected from the Union Army due to being female, she willingly volunteered her time and services to the troops by tending to the wounded. She established the Women's Relief Organization to unite wounded soldiers to their families. Eventually, in 1863, the Union Army did accept her credentials into a paid position at the rank of lieutenant or captain. In 1864, however, she was captured by Confederate forces, but upon her release, she continued to put others first, serving as a director at a hospital for female inmates in Kentucky. In 1865, President Andrew Johnson awarded her the Medal of Honor. However, in 1917, 2 years prior to her death, it was rescinded due to her due to being a civilian at the time of the war. Due to efforts by her family, in 1977, President Jimmy Carter reinstated her Medal of Honor, making her the only female recipient of the Medal of Honor to this day. In the middle, we have Corporal Desmond Doss, who was born in Lynchburg, Virginia in 1919. And as we all know, he is famous for his heroics at Hacksaw Ridge, where he defied orders, as a servant leader often does when it's in favor of other people. And in one day, Corporal Doss was able to save at least 75 lives, putting his own life on the line. And even later, I believe it was within a week, his unit was under attack, and Corporal Doss was shot in the arm and was also affected by a grenade in the area. However, he insisted that medics take care of other soldiers before him. Finally, one that I'm sure nobody in here has heard of is Private First Class Nicholas A. Natale. Growing up, my dad told me stories about Nicholas because they were best friends. So my dad told me that Nicholas was always a servant leader, whether it was in school, helping other students, in the community, serving his church, whatever it was, he was always putting other people ahead of himself. And in 1968, when he was serving in Vietnam, his platoon was attacked, and he threw his body on a grenade. And by the time medics got to him, it was too late. So a servant leader is willing to lay down their own life for the good of others. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, as new NCOs going forward, our mission is to continually develop ourselves through both formal and informal education, make conscious efforts to put others above ourselves, and lead from the front. We have to be the example that we want our soldiers to be. And we have to learn from both our outstanding and poor leadership. We can take pride in what we do, and we can take notes from even the worst of leaders and learn what not to do. We have to know our soldiers, and as the creed says, always place their needs above our own. And we have to develop our soldiers through Sergeant Con training, MOS specific training, encouraging them to attend other military schools, and get a formal education on the civilian sector if that is beneficial to them as well. So we have to train and develop our soldiers. In summary, servant leaders desire to pour themselves out for the good of others. Today we talked about what it means to be a servant leader and how it is incorporated into the Army. We looked at 3 examples from Army history, and we now have something that we can take as we develop ourselves and our soldiers. Are there any questions at this time? This concludes my brief.